This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard and read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, former Secretary of State, former Attorney General Rufus Edmisten, political consultant Doug Raymond, and John Hood, syndicated columnist, who has just this week released his brand new book called Catalyst, a biography of Jim Martin, which I highly recommend to you and is very good reading. Well, on this show, we're going to give a more complete assessment of the just concluded legislative session. We'll talk about the 2016 election season that's now underway, and we'll discuss a report showing North Carolina ranks 50th in the way it treats teachers. So let's get started. Last week, our panel gave a quick analysis of the legislative session that ended on an early Wednesday morning. Now that the dust is settled, we've had time to view the session in its entirety, and we want to review what was done, undone, and what lies ahead. I want to ask each of you, if you had to summarize this session in one or two words, if you could be that brief, what would it be? Chris?
I'll give you four: wrong priorities and missed opportunities.
Rufus?
Very pro-big business.
How many words was that? Four. Doug?
I would say underrated.
Underrated. John?
Good on content, questionable on process.
All right. That's the shortest answer in 18 years we've ever gotten out of a panel. Chris, Governor McCrory has a lot of bills on his desk now to sign, or veto, or do nothing with, in which case they become law. Are there any that you think he might veto?
Well, I doubt there are any he'll veto. I think there are two that he should veto. One is a bill that would, has two really big parts. One is the way we treat immigrants in North Carolina, the way law enforcement treats immigrants, local communities, and one the same bill which would kick about 100,000 people off of food stamps next year. The other one is the Regulatory Reform Act, which is a Christmas tree of regulatory reforms, many of which were never even debated, which is something the governor has always complained about. I think they're bad policy. I think the process is also flawed. I wish he would veto them, but I doubt he will.
Yeah, John, one of the frequent comments we've heard is that the session dealt more with status quo issues and involved less in the way of strategic thinking. Now, the legislators met last winter, in December, as a matter of fact, to talk about strategic planning and strategic issues and so forth like that. What happened? Did they just not have strategic initiatives, or did they just get bogged down?
I don't think either of those is correct, because I think this was a very consequential session that addressed issues that have been around for years or even decades. In other words, I think the critique they didn't do anything sweeping and strategic is false. In fact, that's one of the reasons the session took so long. They were trying to work out what will probably be a significant bond package and a construction package in the budget that's, of course, years and years into the future and decades of benefit, potentially. They worked on Medicaid for years. They finally made a deal on Medicaid reform. That was a big deal. Again, you can disagree with the Medicaid reform they enacted. It was clearly a strategic initiative years in the making. So I think that the session had problems, and I alluded to in my short answer. Even if you like a fair amount of what the legislature did, it wasn't very pretty getting there, but this was a consequential session, not a status quo session.
Rufus, there was a perception that there was even more dissension this year than there has been in many years past. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I disagree. I remember back in the old days, I'm one of those few around that remember back the days of Billy Watkins, and there was just as much dissension then, fighting. I think there was a lot of dissension between the legislature and the governor, but that's about the only kind.
This was Tim Moore's first session, Doug. Give us your evaluation of how he and the House performed.
Well, I think that there was initially a slow start, but I think he got up to speed very quickly as his individual. Some people might find it the unseemly part of politics, but one thing that I was greatly impressed was his fundraising ability in a time when fundraising was very hard. I think Tom Tillis was a great fundraiser, and he showed his prowess. I think maybe the criticism was some of the people that he picked to be his second and third tier people in command, that maybe those choices may have been a little bit wiser, and he could have influenced them to speed up the pace a little bit.
Chris, Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger appeared to us to be a bit more aggressive in this session than he has been in the past. Give us your evaluation of Berger in the Senate.
Well, I disagree with virtually everything the Senate did, but I think he's still probably the most powerful person in Raleigh. I know there's a lot of talk about McCrory having a good session, but the Senate went into this session wanting to cut taxes more. The governor and the House said, and a lot of other people said, we cut taxes a lot in 2013. Let's see how this works. Well, they cut taxes a lot more. I think that they, even though they reached a Medicaid compromise, I think the Senate's big goal was to get for-profit managed care into the Medicaid system. They did that. I think the big, really big fundamental issues, Senator Berger prevailed, even though it seemed like when the budget debate was going on that the House was making some gains.
John, Chris alluded to the fact that Governor McCrory got a lot of what he wanted out of this session.
He did.
As much as 90% of his plan was enacted. Did he have a good year?
He did. He had a very good year. Again, it didn't always look like that was going to be the outcome. There were comments. There was, some public catfighting that at least should have been private catfighting. But objectively, if you look at what the governor was seeking and what he got, even things I don't like, but the governor got them, he got almost everything he wanted. He disagreed on the tax part, and I could understand that. And he wanted roads in his bond package, and ultimately what the legislature did, they didn't put roads in the bond package, but they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on the kind of road projects this governor was seeking. So in almost every case, he got very close to what he wanted. It was a very successful session
Rufus,
for him.
at the end of the session, when they normally get around to appointments, they withheld the confirmation of 9 of the governor's appointments. Was that just to show him who's boss, or what's all that about?
Well, when you do this midnight stuff to 4 in the morning, the last thing you're going to worry about is some appointments. And the legislature didn't do a lot of their appointments either, so I don't rack that up to any of who's the boss in town. No, I think they just ran out of time.
I want to go around very quickly and ask, what do you think was the most significant piece of legislation passed this session? Start with you.
I think the taxing system. We're headed down a road right now of
Chris?
Consumption.
Definitely taxing. Not only did we cut taxes, which I think was unwise, we started to apply the sales tax to more things, which affects poor people the most.
John?
I will say something that took decades to accomplish, which was to end the transfer of funds, more than $200 million a year from the highway fund to the general fund. That will free up a lot of money for roads and bridges.
Doug?
I'm going to have to go with Medicaid. That was the thing that we talked about was going to be the hardest thing to do, and many people thought they couldn't do it. Whether you like the plan or not, they did accomplish it.
Final word. Now that the dust has settled, very quickly, how is this session going to be remembered? Doug?
I'll tell you what, I'm not sure how many of us remember sessions unless they're controversial. I think there was a lot accomplished, but I don't think it's going to be looked at as an outstanding one.
The big theme of this session was capital investment, repair and renovation, new projects, highways, university buildings, community colleges. That's the story.
Chris?
I think we're going to find we could have some revenue problems. I think that we're rushing to cut taxes too much, too fast. At some point, it's going to come back to haunt us.
Rufus?
Repeat again. Big business got all it wanted, and the legislature managed to meddle in everything in local affairs.
All right, well, we thank you for watching NC Spin on the air or on YouTube. There's a reminder that there's much more on our website, ncspin.com, or on NC Spin on Facebook. You'll find video footage not seen anywhere else, perspective pieces from our panel, and our weekly column. Get more balanced debate from the Old North State on ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, or on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. After these messages, we're going to talk about the campaign season.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at hashtag ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
We now return to NC Spin.
Now that the legislature is adjourned, the jockeying begins for the 2016 elections, especially since the new March 15th primary requires candidates to file shortly after Thanksgiving. Rufus, you've run for a lot of statewide offices before. Before we get into specific races, I want to ask you what you think of this new law that allows the Republican and Democratic caucuses of each house and also Council of State members to set up these independent fundraising committees, essentially circumventing the state parties.
Well, it's just an extension of very bad law handed down by the Supreme Court in that horrible Citizens United, the worst case since the Dred Scott case. And what you're doing now, you're diluting the voters, just like Governor Martin said at his book signing. He said, we need strong political parties. That keeps people on their toes. We're doing away with the parties. It's a bad policy. And it'll be only the room for more to occur every day. They'll bump up just like bunnies jumping through the wilderness.
John, the State Board of Elections Director Kim Strock last week issued an advisory letter saying that these independent expenditure groups will play a bigger role in the upcoming elections than they have in the past. Why did she say that, and why?
Well, she was trying to give guidance to what are some very complex matters. Federal law and state law aren't necessarily harmonious here, or at least the federal law may preclude things that state law appears to allow. People thought that she was saying these are her opinions or this is what she thought would be true. She was simply trying to describe the state of the state law as she understood it. The campaigns were not precluded from coordinating activities with certain kinds of groups, not super PACs, not political committees, but groups that could do issue advocacy ads. Now, there are some problems with that. I mean, it could be a situation where if a candidate could confer with one group, and that group could confer with a super PAC, then you've got a kind of a daisy chain. I think that there may be some need to change laws, but she was simply trying to give campaigns and others guidance. That's
Doug, you work in this business, consulting politicians and campaigns. We moved this primary to March 15th so that North Carolina could play a bigger role in the nomination process for the president. Do you still think that's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen for president, exactly. But the big news of moving the rest of those primaries to that date is going to have a huge effect, and I really don't think we're going to see the final result of it till it's all over, because advertising space is going to be at a premium, and only those that can raise the money are going to be able to buy those ads. And I think if you kind of say, hey, my message might get lost in the clutter out there, that's going to put a huge emphasis on your grassroots program. So you may see some surprises that this may not be quite the incumbent protection bill that some people think it is.
Chris, are the candidates really going to have enough time if they got to file in right after Thanksgiving? Are they going to have enough time to raise the money and put together the grassroots organizations to run an effective campaign?
Of course,
particularly
not.
since they can't get TV time.
No, I don't think so. And I think if we were going to do this, I don't think it's a good idea ever. But I think we should, if we really want to do this, we should have put this off 2 years or whatever. I think it's ridiculous for the General Assembly to adjourn the end of September, and tell people they need to start filing for office in December when people had no warning, didn't know this was going to happen. We were told all along only the presidential primary was going to be moved. I think this is terrible, regardless of your political party or your persuasion. This is not a pro-democracy move at all.
All right, so we've got presidential elections in 2016, U.S. Senate race, gubernatorial, Council of State, legislative race. What are the elections that you're going to be looking at this 2016 election season?
I'm going to be looking mainly at the General Assembly, because there seem to be some cracks coming here and there. Some good candidates, Democrats recruiting other candidates, Tom. So I'm going to watch the General Assembly of North Carolina, because I think that government, which governs locally, is the best government we've got.
Doug, what races are you going to be watching, aside from the ones that you're managing?
Exactly. I'm going to watch my clients' races first and foremost, but on my limited free time, I really, it sounds kind of generic, but I'm going to be looking at the presidential primaries, because I think if, especially on the Republican side, If you still have a strong Donald Trump, a strong Ben Carson, Carly Fiorina strong, the anti-establishment mood could affect all the way down the ballot.
John, which races are you going to be watching?
Well, I'm tempted to say the emerging race between the Raleigh News and Observer and Labor Commissioner Cherie Berry. They seem to be committed to defeating her. Who cares who the opponent is, which would be Charles Meeker.
Charles Meeker, yeah.
But I think the governor's race is the most consequential race in North Carolina in 2016 by far.
All right, Chris?
I think the governor's race is too, but I actually think the lieutenant governor's race is interesting. On the Democratic side, there's several candidates who are already running. The lieutenant governor, Dan Forrest, I think is on the far right of the Republican spectrum. It'd be interesting to see if the Democrats, who came very close to defeat, that was one of the closest race on the statewide level. I think that'll be another interesting one to watch.
All right, after these messages, we're going to talk about how we treat our teachers in North Carolina.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
It's a fact. Patients who receive care in the medical home from a trusted family physician reduce healthcare costs through prevention, early detection, and affordable management of high-cost chronic diseases.
Every dollar invested in healthcare matters. Let's invest them wisely, building on North Carolina's medical home model. Better health begins with a medical home, a trusted family physician, the best return on our healthcare investment. Learn about the importance of medical homes at ournchealthcare.com.
Opportunity moves at the speed of broadband, but is rural NC stalled at dial-up? Join the conversation. Attend the NC Rural Assembly on September 29th, a discussion on broadband connectivity and rural NC opportunities. Register now at ncruralcenter.org.
Did you know that 1 in 4 Americans suffer from mental illness? The effects can be devastating. I should know. My father was Robin Williams. I miss my dad every day, but the Foundation of Hope gives hope to me and many others. Mental illness is treatable and will be beatable in our lifetime.
Join us on Sunday, October 11th for the annual Thad and Alice Yule Walk for Hope at the Angus Barn. Great food, prizes, and live music.
Remember, walking together, we are the hope.
You sleep on concrete till your body get immune to concrete.
My mom got my brother and I up and said, come on, we're leaving.
I became homeless in the beginning of this year.
When I was about 4 or 5 years old, our house caught fire.
I used to see my brother. If he see me, he'd turn and go the other direction.
We did the only thing that we could think of, and we went to a Salvation Army shelter.
You know, we don't have this, like, what's your background look like? We just say, what do you need?
I remember the man from the Salvation Army coming down with a box of clothes.
The Salvation Army officer bought my brother and I an ice cream cone.
Last week, my brother walked up to me, and he just started a conversation.
Today I've given my life to the Salvation Army because I remember what somebody did for me, my brother, and my mom over 30 years ago.
The Salvation Army for me means hope.
Compassion.
Family.
Support.
We now return to NC Spin.
The website Wallet Hub just released a report that says North Carolina ranks 50th in the nation as a desirable place for teachers to work. Data collected from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the National Education Association, and Wallet Hub Studies considered 13 criteria, which included teacher pay, teacher safety, per pupil spending, and teacher pay increases. North Carolina data indicates that we had a 14.8% turnover of teachers, a 5-year high. Doug, the critics of this ranking say it was based on out-of-date data because it doesn't reflect the recent pay increases teachers have gotten, and much of it comes from the liberal-leaning NEA. Now, supporters say data's data. You formerly taught school in this state. Are we 50th in the nation in the way we treat teachers?
Well, I don't know. First of all, let me say I cruise a few hubs on the web, but Wallet Hub is not one that I frequent. So I had to do a little checking when I heard about this story. And what I did is I looked at the criteria they used, and it was very interesting because when I saw the 12 or 13 different criteria they used, North Carolina was in the middle of the pack on most of them. But the one that they scored most poorly on was the one that had the most weight, and that was the 10-year average of teacher salary increases. So you know, here comes the spin, folks. When you look at the years that were covered, a lot of those were the Democratic legislature that had frozen teacher pay. So I don't think we're 50th, but, you know, no matter what the criteria, it troubles me that no matter how they count up the numbers, that we would be that high on the
Rufus,
list.
you also taught school in this state. Are the pay increases that the legislature has enacted enough to attract and keep good teachers now?
No, apparently not. They're going to Georgia and Texas and other places, and 4 of my family members taught school. What I'm worried about, Tom, is money matters to teachers, but another thing matters sometimes even more. The nasty things that have been said by people in high places about teachers is outrageous, and I don't like it.
Well, the other factor, Chris, was teacher safety. We were 46th in teacher safety here. And one of the complaints is classroom management. A nationwide survey reported new teachers are just not prepared to deal with the discipline problems they find when they go into the classroom. Are our schools of education failing here? What's going on with that?
Well, they need it sounds like they need to be doing a better job. I do want to go back to something Doug said. A lot of people always, when they talk about the recent history of teacher pay, go back to when the Democrats were last in control. When the Democrats were last in control, we had the greatest economic downturn in a lifetime, and we had to, everybody in the country froze salaries. The Democrats didn't do as much as they should, but clearly the Republicans are not. And I'll leave you with this on the salary. This year, 7 out of 10 teachers in North Carolina got less than no pay raise at all. They got a bonus, which is less than half what millionaires got in a tax break. So if you want to put this session, we talked about the session earlier this in this show, I think that sort of shows you how much teachers are respected. If 7 out of 10 veteran teachers got no increase at all, just a one-time bonus, we got a long way to go.
John, we saw a report this past week that sort of refuted this business about teachers. Rufus was talking about teachers leaving the state in droves and
Correct.
so forth like that, and said that the 14.8% turnover was not all because
it's a very silly misunderstanding of a statistic that is itself questionable. Most of the people who were in that 14% either retired or left one school district to teach at another school district. It was completely misunderstood. The most important thing to know about teacher flows is that we are not exporting teachers to other states. We're importing. We have gained more teachers from other states, thousands of more teachers over the last several years from other states than have left to teach in other states. If you want to talk about data, you should look at the data carefully and not at a silly, poorly weighted study from Wallet Hub.
But Doug, back to you. The Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation survey in April reported that 59% of the voters in this state think that education is on the wrong track. That's up 11% from the year 2013. Why is the rank and file voter saying that?
Well, I think it may be on the wrong track, but you'd have to delve into, as John was saying, a little bit deeper and find out what that data means. Do they think it's on the wrong track because they're underfunded? Do they think it's on the wrong track because we're not teaching the traditional ways of teaching? Common Core would flow in there, so that data could be interpreted a lot of different ways.
That same survey, Rufus, 80% of the people said that public policy and funding decisions, I assume primarily from the legislature, are putting greater burdens on our school and giving fewer resources to our educators to educate the children. What public policy decisions can you think of that they might be talking about?
Well, I think certainly if they had not restored some of the teachers' aides, that has always been a great principle of mine, that the teacher's aid is a wonderful thing. And secondly, we seem to have a certain segment of folks that want to go into more charter schools, not saying they're bad. These other things that are vouchers. What does that say about what people think about the public school system? That goes back to the thing about showing respect. And I don't know. I don't think we're doing too well right now.
All right. After these messages, we're going to get the panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
Hey everyone, I'm Linda Loveland. If feeding your family safe, affordable foods is a priority for you, then join me in saying thanks to the North Carolina farmers who feed us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's say thanks to the farmers who feed your family at #ThankNCFarmers. To learn more about the foods we eat and the farm families who feed us, visit feedthedialoguenc.com. And be sure to thank North Carolina farmers.
Clean transportation options can help you fuel what matters.
We're fueling what matters to us by converting our
fleet of collection trucks over to compressed natural gas. It's a good, smart business decision, and having the air cleaner is something that benefits all the families that work with us.
We use biodiesel in our heavy equipment. We've got propane in a lot of our police cars, and we've really embraced the electric car. Join the City of Raleigh
and fuel what matters.
To learn how you can fuel what matters, visit fuelwhatmatters.org.
Phones are getting smarter, cars more efficient, TVs bigger and more stunning. Imagine the same innovation from agriculture. Meet the Plant Sciences Initiative at NC State, a proposed state-of-the-art research complex where world-class researchers will tackle agriculture's toughest challenges, like feeding the world's rapidly growing population while preserving natural resources for future generations. Join Farm Bureau and NC State in moving North Carolina to the forefront of ag research in the world. Visit keepaggrowing.org.
We were at John Hood's book signing earlier this week, and several of you came up and told me that this is your favorite part of the show. And I agree with you, because I never know what the panelists are going to say. Tell us something we don't know. John Hood.
Well, Tom, I don't know if it's something people don't know. I'm not sure it's something they have paid enough attention to, but there was a lot of debate at the beginning of the legislative session. What's going to happen to that $400 million revenue surplus? Some people wanted to give it back to the taxpayers in a cut. Some people wanted to spend it on more money, or on more programs. What actually happened is all of that money, every single penny plus some, was saved. It was neither spent nor given back to taxpayers. I think that's a fascinating outcome, given that there's almost no political constituency for saving money, and they did it.
And it's also interesting because you don't see much written about that, except I've seen it in your columns, but I hadn't seen much
Apparently,
about that.
not enough people know about it because not enough people are reading my column.
All right. Tell us something we don't know, Doug.
Well, we've talked a lot about the moving of the primary date and those new groups that are formed that some say are going to wipe out political parties. There's a fancy term that gets thrown around about unintended consequences. I think you're going to see that. I think the grassroots is very upset about these new political affiliations, and especially in the House, there is more talk than I have ever heard about just finding somebody to primary incumbents, and I think you're going to see some incumbents
Rufus,
fall.
tell us something we don't know.
I'm very happy to brag about the governor. Now, there we go. The governor is appointed as czar of historic preservation and of doing something about all this surplus property. His name is John LaPinta from Charlotte. He's a former businessman, and they're busy now selling these old historic homes to private hands where they belong and get them out of the hands of the state.
Particularly along Blunt Street.
Along Blunt Street, and put covenants on them and get them away from those.
Chris, tell us something we don't know.
I think a sleeper issue in a couple of these General Assembly races is going to be something that was snuck into the Technical Corrections Bill, which limits local government's ability to regulate fracking in their communities. Stokes County, Lee County, and some other counties that already passed or in the process of passing, trying to pass tough regulations. Fracking is not very popular in a lot of areas. Representative Holloway from Stokes County said he didn't even know it was in the bill or he would have voted against it. That doesn't say too much for somebody who's in the majority. I think we're going to hear a little bit in isolated cases where this could be a big problem for incumbents.
Wow, because several communities have already passed ordinances to that
And
effect.
some of these counties are Republican counties.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback, and read our weekly column, be sure to visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. And we hope you'll join us next week when we'll take on more balanced debate for the Old North State. Until then, stay informed and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.